Would you listen to $1,000 Interconnects? This is an interesting question. Audiophiles love their expensive interconnects. Or should I call them cables, because that's what they are. $1,000 for a pair of RCA cables isn't out of the ordinary, by the way, for audiophiles. And neither would it be for speaker interconnects cables. So the question is then, if the opportunity came up, would you listen to $1,000 interconnects cables? Let me tell you now that your answer should be no. You can't afford it. Okay, you probably can afford it if you sacrifice something else in your budget. But will you get $1,000 worth of value? That, to me, as a concert goer, and if you'll allow me to compare against 1,000 Great British pounds, sacrificing 38.5 of my favourite concert experiences, call it 40 near enough, I'll sacrifice going to 40 concerts just for a couple of bits of wire. I don't think so. My position on cables is that, professionally, I've never been aware of cables making any difference to the sound. Any difference that makes a difference, that is. I'm aware that power amplifiers can be different, but competently designed power amplifiers differ so slightly that it doesn't make any difference in practice for normal listeners. There are some ways cables can affect the sound. If they are damaged or degraded, if they're incorrectly wired, if they're extraordinarily long, if they're insufficiently resistant to interference, if they are inappropriate for the type of use. And electric guitarists will know that cables can crackle. That's the worst. Maybe not the worst, that will be interference from lighting dimmers, which is why we use star-quad cable for microphones. You can look that up. My further position on cables is that if you're worrying about cables, you should probably be worrying about something else. An example. It isn't unusual for a musician to have a guitar hanging from their wall, maybe more than one. An acoustic guitar, it'll resonate. And if you're trying to enjoy your music from your hi-fi in your listening room, and there's an acoustic guitar resonating away, it's making 1,000 times more difference than your cables. Oh, and I really will go into listening rooms in a future video. So these, I think, are reasons enough not to bother about whether $1,000 cables will give you more enjoyment in life than $10 cables from AliExpress. But I need to come back to my question. Would you listen to $1,000 interconnects? Would I? Let's suppose that instead of the correct answer of no, I suggest the answer yes. Yes, you will. If you get the chance, listen to $1,000 interconnects. Now, before I make anyone unhappy, I need to say, perhaps stating the obvious, but sometimes the obvious has to be stated. This is my opinion, and you don't have to take my word for anything. Indeed, you may be an audiophile who can really appreciate the differences in interconnects. See, I used your word there, out of respect. And you'll be having a good laugh. I aim to please. So, how exactly are you going to get the chance to listen to $1,000 interconnects? Well, the easiest way would be just to buy them. RCA cables, speaker cables, the same arguments apply. So, the delivery driver throws them over your hedge and scarpers. You have your cables and you install them carefully, noting any directionality because actually, in some cases, this is significant. You listen to your system and, wow, it sounds great, much better than before. $1,000 cables really are better, but hang on. You're forgetting about your participation bias and your confirmation bias. You can look at both of these on the web. Participation bias is where, for example, people choose to take part in a survey or test because they're interested in the topic. And of course, because they're interested, they are biased. You have demonstrated your interest by spending $1,000, so you are biased towards a favourable outcome. And confirmation bias. This is where some kind of test is done, but only results that confirm your previous expectations are considered. You should read Wikipedia on that. It's scary. See, I said it's scary, and you've already made up your mind whether you should consider it as such. There are probably a number of other biases going on, and I'm sure my commenters will tell me all about them. But then you can dive deeper into this. Did you swap the cables back again? Well, you should, because the act of connecting the cables helps clean off any corrosion. So if you swap cables that have been sitting there for 5 years for new ones, you will hear more of an uncorroded sound. Swap them back, and you'll get better metal-to-metal contact. I didn't invent this, by the way. It's a commonly held thought in hi-fi, and it's definitely true that corrosion can spoil your enjoyment. Anyway, it's not for me to tell you what your findings should be. You'll need to spend that $1,000 and find out for yourself. So how can you do this without putting the money up front? Well, you can go to a hi-fi dealer, or perhaps an actual audiophile will invite you into their listening room. Okay, these are my opinions again, so there's no need to believe any word I say. Firstly, the hi-fi dealer, and of course I mean high-end hi-fi. I'm pretty sure that you'll get a fair demonstration and you'll be able to make up your own mind. What? No high-pressure sales techniques? Well, you're entering the world of personal selling. Don't worry, there's a Wikipedia page for this. I didn't make it up. This is where you have foolishly placed yourself face to face with someone who's trying to sell you something and get your money. They're following a 7-step process, or a 9-step process, depending on who's describing it, or any number of steps. But that last step is closing. The step before that is overcoming objections. You're a fish on a hook. Closing is where you get reeled in. And being a good closer is regarded as high status in the personal selling world. Now, it isn't quite like this in the hi-fi world. In general, hi-fi people who have something to sell are simply in love with their own products. They don't need to follow any 9-step process. They'll simply talk about their products and transmit their love to you. You'll absorb that love. We're all human and we want to be loved, just like everybody else does. But the plain fact is that if you have a shop and someone walks in, you want them to buy something before they walk out, even if it's just a torque wrench for your head shell screws. I didn't make that up. So as you listen to a selection of cables at varying price points, $1,000 not being anywhere near the limit, you will absorb the love. Your love of hi-fi will make the decision for you. Not spending that $1,000 would be disrespectful to the art form that hi-fi is. What about a generous audiophile inviting you into their listening room to audition their cables? Interconnects. Okay, I have my vintage copy of Debrett's Book of Etiquette, and it goes on at length and in depth about the relationship between host and guest. This doesn't just apply to dinner parties and audiophile demonstrations. It applies to very many aspects of life where people come together. Someone is the host and someone is the guest. I can boil it down to this. It's the host's job to make the guest feel welcomed and comfortable. It's the guest's job to make the host feel as though they've performed their role well. So, suppose you're the host of a table in a restaurant. Food is served, but your steak is overdone. You could call the waiter and demand that a new one is cooked to your requirements, but you've now disrupted the meal, and your guests are uncomfortable. Turn this round and you're a guest with an overdone steak on your plate. Send it back and you've disrespected your host. Okay, maybe all the steaks are burnt to a crisp. Send them all back. And so this generous audiophile host wants to make you feel welcomed and comfortable. And so they play to you the best records in their collection through their impressive and costly system, which they love. And yes, perhaps they have the ability to appreciate $1,000 Interconnects. They're doing what they need to be a good host. And you, as their guest, nod your head in approval because you want to make your host feel as though they're performing their role well. You know, this isn't going to lead to good decision-making. You'll probably leave saying, yes, I really am going to consider upgrading to $1,000 Interconnects, even though your head is full of doubts why you would ever be so crazy to do such a thing. But there's a better way of deciding whether $1,000 cables are right for you. Testing. Not the kind of test where you swap $10 cables for $1,000 cables and see if you can hear the difference. I mean a proper test. There's a lot to say about testing and statistical interpretation, and I'm just scratching the surface here. But I can give you some interesting concepts to look up further if you're interested. So, firstly, we have blind and double-blind tests. A blind test is where someone offers you 2 glasses of cola and asks you which you prefer. You choose glass A, and of course that is Coca Cola. Glass B is Pepsi, and who would choose that? This test is a bit like asking a horse to count up to 4. The horse can count up to 4 just fine by stamping its hoof, but it's taking a cue, perhaps an unconscious cue, from its handler when to stop. Of course, this person testing you for cola preferences works for Coca Cola and has subtly guided you to the correct answer. I said glass because my Debrett's Book of Etiquette advises never to drink from the bottle. Of course, a blind test could be carried out in perfectly good faith, but the method is so open to influence from the tester that you really shouldn't rely on it. A double-blind test is so much better. The test is set up behind the scenes, and the tester doesn't know which glass is Coke and which is Pepsi. So the result should be correct. The test subject will say correctly which they prefer. But there's another layer of subtlety available. The test is double-blind, and on top of that, the tester doesn't know what the test is for. Let's suppose that the test is about the language the testee will use to confirm their choice. Do they say prefer, like, enjoy, would drink again? The purpose of the test could be to inspire copy for a marketing campaign, and it's nothing to do with which drink anyone prefers. What I hope you'll see from this little example is that there's more to testing than just swapping cables. Here's another one, the ABX test. So the question could be, can people tell the difference between Coke and Pepsi? I probably can't. I don't like either of them. But here's how the test works. It can be double-blind. The tester gives the testee a glass of Cola A, then a glass of Cola B, then a glass of Cola X, which can be either A or B. Can they tell which cola is X? Is it A or is it B? Essentially, this is a difference or no difference test, and the results can be interpreted statistically. If the testees are 95% right, you can be pretty sure there actually is a difference. If it's 50-50, then there's no difference. Oddly, if they're 95% wrong, it still shows there's a difference. Oh, by the way, I didn't just pluck 95% out of the air. It's the percentage where results are often taken as being likely to be correct. They could still be wrong. These methods of testing have been around for donkey's years, and much of our daily experience is based on products and services that have been established through these tests. So, why has no one ever thought of applying them to audio cables? Oh wait, they have. I've put a number of links in the description that will lead you to tests and commentary on tests, all audio related. Some are Internet Archive links, so the display may be malformed, but at least some of the content is still present. Some links have links that you can explore still further. You wouldn't have to explore far to see that even testing is a contentious issue. Perhaps we need to test the tests. So, whether you should listen to $1,000 cables, Interconnects, is a question only you can answer. And whether you can get $1,000 worth of value from them, compared to the other costs and expenses in your life, again, only you can answer. If you'd like to comment, you'll probably want to support or contradict my arguments, or perhaps you have a cable-related experience you'd like to tell us, or perhaps experts in biases such as participation and confirmation can chime in. And if you've ever taken part in a cable test of any kind, we'd love to know the results. See you soon.
When will I get my t-shirt with the logo on it?
You can forget that. I had to buy my own.